Welcome everyone to tonight's Artist Loft class. I'm your instructor, Adrienne Hodge, and tonight's class is on drawing flower petals using alcohol-based markers. And we've got a pretty large supply list for tonight's class, and I'll get to that in just a moment. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on, even though the class is called drawing flower petals, if I go too fast on like the actual drawing part of like rendering the flowers themselves, or the flower petals themselves, or if you feel like you're just a little lost or like I'm skipping over some things, it's because we had a class called Flower Fundamentals, drawing a rose. And Chanel is going to drop the link to that class in the chat. That was from June, I believe. And in that class, it's an hour-long class. You can find it on YouTube if you're watching this recording later. And you can just search Artist Loft Flower Fundamentals Drawing a Rose, or you can look on the Michaels website under fine art classes that are archived there, previous classes, and you'll see it there as well, or the link to the YouTube class. And yeah, in that class, I really go very slowly and talk about just the structure of a rose and you know, rendering the contour lines. So that's something I'm not going to spend too much time on tonight, because I really want to talk more about layering and blending colors and using the colors of the alcohol-based markers and the pens to really build up like a painting, the individual flower petals. So this class is a really great supplement to that Flower Fundamentals class, Drawing a Rose, because in that class we kind of just focused on you know, the building blocks of rendering the flower. So I'm not going to go too much into that, but there was a moment at the end of that class where I talked about how you know, the rose petals, just drawing them in gray with graphite, how, you know, it could be anything. Like when you zoom in closely on that, you know, you're really just looking at pure value, the dark and light of the graphite in that previous class, and how it doesn't really feel like a rose petal unless it's got another rose petal next to it. And so I thought this class would be really great to do, you know, months later, when I was planning for August, because I thought, you know, I had just finished that class where I made that comment, and I thought, well, the best way to separate just one single rose petal is to get all the colors in there and really blend and layer, and then, you know, the one rose petal by itself will look like a rose petal. But when you're just using graphite to draw it, trying to separate one petal from another, you know, it looks like it could be a lot of different things. Anyway, so yeah, check out that class. If this class, you know, feels like you're missing something, then it's that class that you should check out. And if you already saw that class, then great. And you'll still be able to follow along tonight. That one's just a really great supplement. All right, I'm gonna switch over to my tabletop view. I've got the rose petals in question right here, just for decorative purposes there, because I just have a lot of dry every time I get roses or flowers of any sort. I like to dry all my flowers and keep them. My house is full of dead flowers. So these were the actual rose petals that I used when I set up the little still life photographs that I included on the supply list. So in the supply list, you should have 3 reference images of these rose petals and a couple of leaves. Although I just realized I don't think I included the drawing of the leaf. At least it's not on my desk right here. Maybe I should go looking for it. Well, we'll just stick to the rose petals. I don't recall if that was in the example image. Anyhow, here is the other reference photo, and then this one just zoomed in on those two petals. So it's a lot of the same petals. I just, pulled some out and got a few different references there for you. So you've got the reference images on the supply list. You've got the Artist Loft drawing and sketching set, so you can have some sketching pencils to get yourself started, although we're really not going to be using the sketching pencils a ton tonight, but you'll definitely want some. The Artist Loft synthetic eraser. I've got the illustration pen set that has the 0.3, 0.1, and 0.5 pen. I have the 6-piece grayscale set of the dual tip sketch markers, because we're definitely going to use a couple of the grays in that set that are not found in this other set. So I've got the 24-piece dual tip sketch marker set with a multitude of colors, and I've got a few of those set aside right here. Then you're going to want a drawing or sketching pad for our preliminary sketching. So I've got the Artist Loft 9x12 drawing pad, and then the marker paper. So that's the 9x12 Artist Loft marker pad paper, and that's very important because these alcohol-based markers really don't show up the same on drawing paper as they do on the marker paper. You could use watercolor paper if you don't have the marker paper, but the marker paper is definitely the best for these. If you don't already follow me on Instagram, you can find me at Adrienne Hodge Art. I'm Adrienne Hodge Fine Art on Facebook. Don't forget to tag your work with Make It With Michaels or Michaels Classes, those hashtags. And here's some of my art on a couple of my business cards right there. All right, well, this is one of those classes where usually when I have this many supplies, it's a 2-part class, and this is just a 1-part class, so I better zip it along here. But we are keeping it pretty simple, just focusing on, pretty simple subject matter here. Well, complicated subject matter, but on a small scale, and we're just going to look at 1 or 2 of these petals. So you may be by the end of class, we'll just have 1 or 2 of these petals drawn. And if we have time at the end, I'll do one of the leaves in the drawing, but I'm going to focus on the rose petals since that's what was advertised. Okay, so I'm going to grab a piece of my, any questions about supplies before we move on?
No questions yet.
Okay, cool. But yeah, I always just like to manage expectations. So by the end of class, you might have a nice page of notes. I'm going to really break down the different markers that we're going to use to layer up as we build on these rose petals. And if you check out that other class that I mentioned, the Flower Fundamentals Drawing a Rose, you could combine the 2 skill sets in this class and that class and have a really lovely finished product.
We did just get one question. Can we use Copic markers?
Of course, yes. Okay. The Artist Loft alcohol-based markers are definitely the Michaels versions of those markers. So by all means. All right, so I'm gonna grab a 4B pencil, but that is only so that you can see my lines showing up on the Zoom as I'm working. And if you, you should use an H pencil to sketch so that it's easier for you to erase your lines. I feel like I want the little teacup with the rose petals in here because it's so pretty. But if my left hand is bumping it too much, I'm gonna have to move it out of the way. Okay, so grab one of my reference images here. And let's look at, let's see, I'm trying to see which one of these like specific petals I drew the most on this example. think it was, I really can't tell. It's one that's got a little curl to it there, which might be that one, but no, it's different. Okay, well here, let's start with this one. I definitely drew that one in my example. Well, this is a good time to point out that, like, since I can't tell exactly which one of the petals I drew, that you should give yourself a lot of grace when you're drawing these, that it doesn't have to look specifically like the petal that we're drawing. We just want it to resemble a rose petal. So if when you're done, you show your reference photo to somebody and they're like, wow, great rose petal, but they can't tell which specifically, which petal in the photograph it was, that doesn't mean anything. Just like drawing a tree or a cloud or a piece of fruit or anything organic, we just want it to resemble that subject matter. You'll drive yourself crazy trying to make it look specifically like, that particular petal. I just included those 3 photos because I took so many pictures that day and thought I'd just give more than less for references. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is break it down to the value shapes, and we're paying attention to the contour lines, so the curves of the 3-dimensional surface that we're looking at, because even though the rose petal is, thin and flat, it's curved in a lot of places. It's it's still a 3-dimensional thing. It may not be that thick, but it's kind of undulating and shifting and turning, and it definitely has a form that is 3-dimensional. So we want to suggest those 3 dimensions in the way we are drawing it. And the way that we're going to do that is by the contour lines. And if you don't know what I mean by contour lines, you can check out the first ever class in this series. It was called Introduction to Graphite and Drawing Forms. And I go into a lot of details in that class about how to draw the contours of a form and to see those shifting lines. And I'm going to do it right now just in this sketch, and then I'm going to draw this again on the marker pad paper in just a second. But for now, I'm just go ahead and sketch the entire outline of the form and really pay attention to all of those dips and curves. And just like right here, I could just leave that, but I'm going to go ahead and fix it real quick. But if that happens to you where it's not like exactly the same way that it looks on the petal in the photograph, you can kind of just go with it. All right, and then I'm going to get this little lip, this curve that's happening here where the petal kind of folds onto itself. And again, it folds onto itself right here. And then there's a big dip in the middle. So a bit of like a crescent shape in the dip there. I'm kind of looking at the dark shadows and the shift in light to dark of the colors. And then in just a second, I'll put all those contours in there so you see what I mean if you don't already know what I mean. But first, I'm going to get all these big organic shadowy shapes. And yeah, you can see what I mean from the drawing rose flower fundamental class. I mean, what is that? That could be anything right now, right? Okay, so now we're looking at the particular elevational curves on the petals. So right here, it's kind of folding over. So it's got like, I'm gonna put some little rainbow lines, but it's not a perfect shape because then it dips down again right here. I'm really paying attention to all those nuanced dips and curves. And it's kind of flat underneath. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me put the rest of these curves in. So it curves, but then right here at the edge, there's kind of a two-sided lip happening there. And then in the shadow, it sort of dips down. So we want to give the impression of it curving under here, which is subtle, but just having like a slight curve there to those lines. And this is important because when we start to add our color, we want to follow those contours with the color that we're adding. So see how the way that I'm blending and adding the colors is still following those dips and curves that I'm seeing. And then we can even outline it a little bit with the illustration pens to emphasize that even more. So we've got a lot of fun supplies here to help us achieve this goal. And there actually are little lines on the petal itself. Oh, look, this looks like, well, I don't know, I can't tell, but I'm just gonna hold one up really close to the camera. I mean, there are like little lines and veins on the rose petal that, you know, follow the dips and curves of what we're talking about. And certainly on a leaf, you can see the same thing. So, you know, look really closely and you'll see those little veins and they can guide you around. So like right here on the lip, it's kind of curving over. Right here, it's dipping down. I said I wasn't going to spend too much time on like how to render the rose, but then I just can't help it and I'm doing it anyway. But this is what I cover in the Drawing a Rose Flower Fundamental class. So I'm going to try not to get too wrapped up in this right now. But in the darker shadows, you know, you can really just fill those in as much as you want since that's going to be a dark shadowy shape. And let me go ahead and get the big shadowy shape here that's falling across the page because I just set these on a piece of paper when I photographed them. But in the lighter values is where you can kind of not press down so hard on your drawing utensil. Same thing with the alcohol-based markers. When we start doing that, we're gonna, you know, really watch the pressure that we're putting on them as we blend them. But certainly with the graphite, shifting the amount of pressure that you're putting on in those shadows. And yeah, just really get in there and notice the three-dimensional curve to all of the contours and where those shadows are the most prominent, where the veins are. And in the shadow that's falling across the page, we can use just like a straight hatching line to fill that in so that we can suggest to the viewer that they are looking something that is all flat and connected here. So just developing a muscle memory for this three-dimensional form and getting an understanding of how to render it here. Okay, spent 10 minutes on it. I think that's pretty good for our preliminary sketch. So now I'm going to switch to the marker pad paper. Yeah, like I said, if that was too fast and you need more help just rendering the 3 dimensions of it and really breaking it down like that, then you can check out that other class. This class was always meant to be a supplement to that one. Okay, so I'll just draw that same rose petal again since we already focused on it here. But this time I'm not going to put as much detail into my preliminary sketch, and I'm actually going to do it with 2H because I want to be able to erase my lines. So if you can't see what I'm drawing, let me put my aesthetic back in here. If you can't see what I'm drawing on the page right now. Just trust me, I'm drawing something very similar to what I just drew. Just giving myself a little scaffolding with my 2H pencil, nice and light so that it's easy to erase. And I know it's not going to show up on the screen, and it's really not that much. It's not as detailed. I'm just giving myself the main shadow shapes and just kind of a very loose implied line sketch. You could even dive in with the markers themselves and not even do this little preliminary sketch, but it definitely helps, especially just so you don't get lost, and specifically for me, so while I'm talking, I don't get lost. Okay, I know you can't see that, and that is okay. Okay, everybody's okay with that. All right, so now I want to break down the colors that I'm seeing and want to create a little palette. And luckily, I already did the heavy lifting here. So I made a little bit of a guideline of 2 colors that I definitely mixed together to get this like deep, this deep red to happen, because even though there's so many lovely colors in these sets, there are just certain colors that are not straight out of the, you know, the markers don't come. You have to, like that, you have to blend them to get that color. So we want like a deep magenta, like for our darkest shadows. So what I used was, and I maybe didn't use a ton of stuff out of this grayscale pack, but I did use the N6, the neutral gray 6. So we definitely want that one. The neutral gray 2 that comes in this 24 set is just not quite a dark enough gray to get me where I want to that deep dark red. And then I used the R19 and the R9. So let me find those. The R19 right here. I'm not seeing the R9. Did I hide it from myself? Okay, I'm not going to worry about it too much. If you don't have the exact colors that I'm using, like I can't, for whatever reason, find the R9 right now. And yeah, if you don't have the exact same colors, just get creative. You know, you can always go off script a little bit and you know, exaggerate colors, or if you just, you know, find a color scheme that you're really happy with. We just want to get something that's sort of close. Plus, it's hard to perfectly match, you know, colors on a rose petal like this. I mean, there's so many like faint colors, but you're definitely going to want, you know, some sort of neutral tan colors, some like skin tones sort of colors. Like I've got the E17, I've got the mocha, the E10, the E15, the R3, which is like this peony pink. And then I've got the E14, which is the pearl, which is kind of a Caucasian skin tone color. And then I want the E6, this hazelnut. And then maybe we'll go ahead and grab this coffee color too, could be helpful. So there's a lot of browns, a lot of different, you know, browns, and there's definitely kind of a yellowish hue happening here, but I feel like all of those skin tones really achieve, you know, the effect that we're going for here. But I really exaggerated the pinks that I was seeing on all of these rose petals, because the pinks and the deep red colors just, you know, really made it feel more rose-like. So that's why yeah, my sketches maybe look a little more pink than the roses in the photographs. They have a lot of that peachy yellow color. So we've got that light peony pink, and then I don't know where my R9 has gone off to, but I am not going to worry about it. I know it had to be in this set. Maybe I'll grab this crimson red, which is the R18 instead, and mix that with the neutral 6 gray and see what we get. And then go ahead and grab your illustration pens. So we've got, I had a 0.5 and a 0.1 here. And if you want to just kind of do a few little stippling dots with those and just test them out and see what you're working with there, and maybe some hatching lines or some cross hatching lines with either your 0.3 or your 0.5. And if you're new to drawing with the illustration pens, there's a great class that I did in July called Understanding Grayscale that you could refer back to, where I take a lot of time to go through the materials in the this grayscale set and the illustration pens, and just, you know, do a variety of mark making there. So that can be really helpful. Okay, so we've got our little color palette here, and if you want to go through and make like a little swatch with each one of those colors that we pulled out, just to see how they look lined up next to each other, and then maybe do a little blending with that, your neutral grays. So that's the N. Oh, that's the N too. Hang on. I'm really just going for a deep red, because we want to try to match some of those roses have that very that deep color, and that's pretty close to it when you put it right on top. Look, it just disappears, especially under the zoom lighting there. Okay, so that's the N6, and then the R19, I feel like gets us pretty close. When you layer those on top of each other, it gets us pretty close to that deep red color that I'm seeing on that rose petal. And then if you want to even just play around with your light to dark on those skin tones, and like go from light to dark and just layer them and see how they interact with each other. So that was the E14. And then I'm going to go on top of that a little bit with the E15. And then I'll do the E6, which is the hazelnut, on top of that. And I can put a little hatching lines in and start to see how we can get close to that peachiness that's happening. This is the E17. I've got a great class on painting skin tones in watercolor, by the way, coming up in September. I think that should already be listed on the website. I actually have a couple of reference photos that I'm going to add to that, because some good friends of mine were at the beach recently and they all have very different skin tones, and they got me a really nice photo of their forearms in the beach light. I was being so ridiculous too. They sent me one on kind of an overcast day, and I was like, if it's not too much trouble and you could get another one in the strong sunlight, that would be even better. And then they did. So anyway, okay. So I just kind of blended all those colors on top of each other. So that's a nice little preview of what we're doing here. All right, so now we're just gonna take those colors that we've pulled aside, and then, yeah, you can use the black in your alcohol-based marker set to do, some of that, the darkest darks on the petal, or some of the little black lines that I've done around the edges. But that can sometimes take a lot of muscle control, and so using the illustration pens is a good alternative. But if you're pretty, skilled with handling the brush tip pens, and you want to do those accents that we're going to do at the end with the black marker in the set, then by all means you can do that as well. Okay, so I'm still just looking at this rose petal here. Let's start with our lightest light. So that's the E14. And I'm seeing that lightest light color all over the place, really. We're going to start from kind of the bottom and work our way up. So we're looking at the colors that we see on the bottom and then layering those colors up. So, and this definitely, it takes a lot of practice of looking. Like if you're a beginning artist and you're just kind of starting out in your art practice and you feel like you're having a hard time progressing, spend more time looking and less time doing for a while. Go to some art museums, sit outside in your garden, just look and just notice. Daydreaming is such an important part of the artistic process, and sometimes it takes like just staring at something for a really long time to see something that, someone like me who's been drawing and painting for almost 20 years regularly can see really easily. Like, if you're really like just wincing right now, like, how is she seeing that color? It really takes a lot of practice looking to like just have those colors kind of jump out at you. It definitely doesn't happen overnight. I've had people get even annoyed with me in a class when I like immediately, can match a color that they've been struggling to match for the last, 20, 30 minutes or something. And it's like, well, it's not like I just came over here and did that in 2 minutes. I've had a lot of years of practice to be able to do that in a couple of minutes. Okay, so then I've got the E15, but I've done the heavy lifting for you here. So just trust me, it's these colors will get us there. It's kind of hard to see these lighter colors on the screen right now, I'm noticing, but once I start to layer the darker colors, they'll definitely come through a little bit more. I'm following those contour lines that we talked about. Like right here, I'm starting to see some of this color, which didn't look so, that's the pale pink. It didn't look so pink to me when we were blending it a second ago, but now that I'm like seeing it in the context of the rose petal here, it really feels really pink. So I'm just following the contours of where I'm seeing it. And if you really like one color more than another and you want to just like put it everywhere, then, feel free to exaggerate with that particular color. Okay, and then the E6. And so this is where I'm kind of looking for some of those veins on the rose. And like this color is definitely getting into more of the shadow areas. And notice I'm kind of bouncing around with my colors. I'm doing that on purpose so that I don't overwork anything in any one area. You can always add more of a certain color, but once you've put too much of it on there, you can't really take it back out. but you know, also let go of any pressure you're putting on yourself here to have a perfect product, because we're kind of just doing a little study right now, right? No pressure for this to be a masterpiece. This is the E17, it's the praline. And same thing, I'm just bouncing around, kind of starting to layer it on top of that hazelnut, the E6, starting to blend into some of those shadow areas. Following the contours. And even though this doesn't perfectly match that yellow that I'm seeing on the rose petal, I'm gonna kind of wrap it around up here and add some accents to this part of the petal. And if you want to pull like the canary yellow into the mix here and like really push the yellow that you're seeing there, you definitely can. I did that on this one. In this example, I put a lot more kind of yellow and orange in there. And honestly, I just didn't like it. I thought it like felt a little too, I don't know, I liked how the pink looked. The pink just felt more rose-like to me. But I do like how it gave it kind of a patina on the rose, and the dried roses definitely have that feeling. So if you want to mix some of the browns in with like your yellow and orange right here, you know, feel free to play around with that. Another way to apply these, like, let me just go ahead and do it with the canary yellow. It's not going to hurt anything here, is to do like some stippling dots. And that's a good way to kind of introduce a color into the mix without, you know, over committing to it. So I can kind of put some little stippling dots in with that color, and that could, you know, also just give it an extra dimension. Okay, I feel like that's all of the skin tone colors. Oh no, I didn't do the E10. There's not a whole, in this particular petal, there's not a whole lot of dark brown. I think I was seeing more brown in like that one. That petal has a lot more brown in it. And definitely some of the ones that get like a deep dark red. I know we're running low on time here. I'm going to do one like small one like this in just a second. So let's finish this one up. Okay, so I'm going to do the dark brown on this one. I'm going to switch to that N6 and the N19 and get some of that darker pink going. So I'm really blending here in the darker shadows. I can do stippling, or I can do some hatching lines, whatever feels best to you, and start to build up these shadows. Remember, we're really layering two colors here to get that dark pink to happen. And then we want this along the edge of this little lip here. And I think that's it. We might use actually, we might need a darker brown right there in that shadow. I'll come back to it. Okay. And then the peony pink is going to be the last one. Really, I'm just like pacing myself because I know I got a little like excited with that peony pink and like just put it in everywhere, and the pink just kind of took over everything. So I'm saving it for last. So it's going to be our kind of connecting color that's going to pull it all together. I don't know how many of you guys in the class tonight are in Texas. I'm in Austin, and we have not had any decent rain in a very long time, and the wind is blowing out there, and we've got some dark clouds, and like getting so excited that it might actually rain here tonight. We'll see. All right, so I'm layering to get that dark shadow to happen, but then I'm also going to use this color by itself in just a second and do some little hatching lines, start to pull this together. It feels like it's been slow going, but we're going to finish it really quickly here in just a second. Remember, it doesn't have to look like that rose petal. It just has to look like a rose petal, and it's going to. I have a feeling all of y'all's rose petals are looking really good. You can just feel it. Feel the concentration. Also, because nobody's stopping me to ask any questions, so I'm assuming we're all zipping along here. Okay, ready to pull it together a little more with this peony pink. So this is where I can, like, you know, just anything that feels like it was lacking, fill it in a little bit. And if it feels like too much, then you can, you know, back off and fill things in with some of those lighter, like Caucasian skin tones we used. And it's all in the details, you know, making something feel like that optical illusion that we're going for. So really notice like those little dents on the side and the little dips and curves to things. Okay. I'm gonna go to my pale pink to fill in a little more. And that really blends nicely with the peony pink too. I'm just going to go ahead and fill in a bunch with my pale pink now. And these same rules or process applies to all of these rose petals. I know I hoped that we would like get to like 2 or 3 of them tonight, but it looks like this one and maybe one more little tiny one will probably be it. I think I can do a tiny one in just a second. And then we'll have a couple minutes for everybody to share if anybody wants to share their sketches. So yeah, putting like some little details in, and then our illustration pens can also help us pull it together here in just a moment. Just, you know, whatever color it feels like it needs a little more of, like I'm going back to that hazelnut now. And I am actually going to put my mocha dark brown in some of these darker shadows. Like maybe right here on the lip at the edge. I'm going off script a little bit here and using this coral reef color that I pulled out because I realized I didn't have that other pink that I wanted or that other red. And that's a nice one, actually. It's the R6, the coral reef. That's a nice little connecting color too, to go from the dark pink to the light pink. And maybe put some of these like little veiny things in here as well. Okay, and then we've got the light shadow falling across the table. And I'm just going to use my neutral gray 2 for that. You can blend a couple of different grays if you want. And have it shift a little bit. And then I'm going to put the accents on with the illustration pens. So I'm going to use the 0.1. And this is where I like to like kind of hover over the page and don't like commit. Don't just like, I mean, you do whatever you want, but I like to hover a little bit over the page and like just, you know, make it feel really real sketchy and loose and just like put a, you know, kind of imply a few lines here and there. But some of those veins weren't really standing out to me with the pinks. And so I can put those in with some little hatching lines that follow those curves and just, you know, ever so slightly outline some of those edges and, you know, put some of those little contours in there with some cross hatching or some stippling. Can also really emphasize those shadows like this if the shadows aren't really coming across for you, or some of the like bruisey moments on the petal. And it also just gives it like a cool illustrated feeling. Outline the edge of the shadow that way. Okay, and now I'm not gonna start out the same way with this other petal. I'm gonna look at one of these smaller petals that's a lot like that one, like this one right here, and I'm just gonna sketch it with the pen to start. I keep it, so I'm kind of gonna go the opposite way now. I'm gonna start with a very implied line version of that petal. Put the darkest shadows in first. And this is what I mean by, you know, if I like to do something a certain way, it might be the opposite of the process you prefer. So I'm kind of totally reversing it now. We started with the light and worked our way up to the dark on that other one. And with this one, it gets so dark anyway, you might as well start with the dark and then work your way back towards the light. So I went ahead and put some of the hatching lines in there at the edge, and I got like where it curves over. I'm looking at that particular, that might even be that one on the table right there. It looks very similar to it. They all look the same. Start looking the same after you look at them too long. Okay, so we want that deep red to happen. So I'm going to use my N6. Following the curves of the petal here. And then I'm using my garnet 19 on top of that. And we didn't talk about any greens, but there's a tiny little bit of green there at the edge of that one. This one. I'll put a tiny little bit of green at the end. And then I'm going to do that pearl the E14. The E17, the praline. If I'm going too fast, you can always watch the recording of this later and slow it down. Oh yeah, that one's looking really nice. We've also had nearly an hour of practice staring at these rose petals and, you know, trying so hard with that other one. So sometimes, you know, don't give up if you feel like you tried really hard with that other one and it didn't quite work out. Maybe the next one you do will come a lot easier. Okay, and then I liked the coral reef color, even though I didn't talk about that too much with our palette that we made, but I think that one finishes it off nicely. That looks like a rose petal, guys. That other one I was kind of questioning myself, but I'm pretty proud of that one, that little one. Okay, and then let's put a shadow on the end of that. Give it some weight. And you can obviously go a little darker with your shadows. Like, let me go ahead and do my neutral gray 5 on top of that. There we go. That feels a little better. Add that one to my other shadow too. All right, well, we've got 7 minutes left. Let's see. We could do one more. Are there any like trouble spots or any questions that anybody has that I could address, or I can just do one more little rose petal now? There are no questions.
Yeah, we don't have any questions so far, but I'll let you know if anything pops up in the next couple of minutes.
Okay, great. Let's see. I feel like all of those little ones are kind of the same as the one we just did. Maybe I'm looking for one that's like really weird and different. I guess I could. Oh, is there a question?
Yeah, so there's 2. Joey asks, alcohol markers layer rather than blend wet. Question mark.
Not quite sure.
I said it more as a statement, but it was a question.
Oh, okay, but there's a quick. Yeah, I mean, that sounds correct. Yeah, they definitely I mean, they do blend together. Like you can see, you know, when we were like building, where's my little example page, you know, they definitely can. Oh, and I didn't even talk about the blender. Oh my God, we've got the N1 blender here. If you feel like your colors are not blending together, you can, thank you for saying that. You can use the blender that comes in the set and start to get them to like really bleed together, and they will start to take on, you know, the effect of like, you know, almost like watercolor when they blend together. So that's always an option to use the blender, but I feel like they do really start to bleed and blend together, especially when you use the colors that are so similar to each other. Like, I mean, look at that E14 next to the E15. Those colors are so similar, or same thing with the grays. I mean, you can go check out that Understanding Grayscale class too, where I talk about layering with the grayscale alcohol-based markers. But I mean, they do, it is layering, you know, but honestly, when you're painting anything, it's you're layering, and then the things like mix together. You know, oil paint definitely like mixes together, but if you're working with, you know, watercolor or ink or gouache, oftentimes the blending is happening through dried things that are layered. So I just layered and kind of blended together those two colors. And, you know, I mean, they're layered, but they're also kind of mixing and, you know, they're blended. So it's, I guess it's a bit of one of those words that like everybody's interpretation of blended could be different. Okay, well, I feel like I answered that question now. We've only got 4 minutes left. Was there another question? I could just answer another question and then we can look at everybody's examples.
The other question was about the blender pen, actually, so I think you might have answered it already.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm always happy to talk shop with the supplies. I recently got a new day job, so I'm not doing the Q&As that I used to do after these classes anymore, but I've got plenty of other previous Q&As on my Instagram if you want to go back and check them out, where I, you know, took the time to answer questions after class. They're all still there on my Instagram from the last year, from about November until I guess July was when I stopped doing them. They weren't always super heavily attended, but people watched the playback later, it seemed like. But it's at Adrian Hodge Art, and if you just go to the like all the archived videos on my Instagram page, you can see the Q&As. There was another class on alcohol-based markers back in January, and I definitely did a Q&A after those classes. It was called, it was illustrating a character based on a interesting fruit or vegetable. It was like vegetable or fruit inspired character using alcohol-based markers. And those classes are archived on YouTube as well, so you can check those out from January. All right, well, I'd love to see y'all's examples. Let me see your rose petals. If you'd like to share, just hold up your paper and Chanel can spotlight you. Oh, I'm seeing some lovely ones held up so far. Oh, look how nice and pale and light that is. Yeah. Oh, I love that you did that version. That's what I mean. Like, yeah, do what's speaking to you with the colors. The pale pinks. Very nice. And I'm really feeling that little lip coming over there. Oh, yes. Look at that. That little one's really convincing. Lovely. Oh, wow. Look at that. Oh, and I love everybody's individual styles that come out with these. Oh, those are gorgeous. Yes, if you post that on Instagram, please tag me so that I can see it again, except for just flashed on the screen right now. I love it. Oh, look at that leaf. Oh man, I love all of these, all the stylized qualities that are coming out in these. Really nice. That leaf was so strong. Oh yes, that one's definitely, I'm feeling that little dip in the middle there. I know I emphasize that one a lot in mine too. And those colors look really nice.
There's no one else
Oh,
holding
okay. That
up
wanted to
the picture, so I think that's it.
Okay, well, thank you everyone. Even if you didn't want to share, appreciate you for coming to the class. And next week's class is a two-part class on gouache sunsets. And I'm really excited about that one because I love gouache. And we're actually not going to be using Artist Loft gouache in that class because it seems that the Artist Loft gouache has been discontinued. So we are going to be using another brand of gouache that you can purchase at Michael's. The Sennelier brand you can definitely get online, I was told, and I have that one here. Gouache is an opaque watercolor. And in all of my personal work, I use ink, which is, you know, also very similar to gouache and watercolor. It's just even more opaque than gouache. So I'm excited. I love painting with gouache and I love sunsets, and I provided reference images for those. And we're going to do 4 little panels of sunsets on watercolor paper, and it's a 2-part class. So hopefully you will join me for that one. And if you have the Artist Loft gouache, that works as well. But we believe they updated the supply list with another brand, so that people can make sure to have some gouache. All right. Thank you all and see you next week.